Hello, ladies and gentlemen, and welcome back to the Steven Now. Today, I'll be doing one of my first ever episode reviews. Now, this is gonna be a new series on the channel where I will be reviewing every single Batman 66 episode, all 3 seasons, and possibly do a movie review. Now, first of all, I absolutely adore this show. Batman 66 is one of the most iconic interpretations of Batman ever made. It is literally one of my all-time favorite TV shows. Now, I was always a Bond fan, but before I ever was a Bond fan, I was a huge Batman fan. Before I was a James Bond fan, I would watch everything Batman related. And surprisingly, in my kid years, the interpretations I watched were either the two movie serials from the 40s and the two Joel Schumacher movies. And of course the 66 Batman movie. I didn't know that they could be. I didn't really watch more darker interpretations as the years went on. And even to surprise, I didn't even know that the Batman 66 movie was actually a part of a TV show. So I was genuinely shocked. And of course, as soon I was year 6, I finally got the all 3 seasons. I watched the whole thing and I was amazed. For me, it's just a show that was just made for fun. It's campy, it's cheesy, it's silly, and that's what we love about it. It has so many iconic quotes or phrases from this show. These included things like the Robin saying "holy something" to the many beloved running gags that I'm sure the show definitely had, and of course the villains being played by some of the best talented people of the time. And basically anyone with talent or just had a huge media celebrity during the 60s came on this show to either play a minor character, a villain, or just to make cameo appearances. And of course, it's just absolutely bloody awesome. So, in honor of this show, in honor of one of the greatest interpretations of all time, I will be reviewing every episode in order in which they were released. So, sit back, relax, and hopefully we can enjoy this marvelous experience, this marvelous show, and I'm really looking forward to it. So, sit back and let's get on with the review. First off, let's get into some background. Now, the Batman 66 show ran for 3 seasons, from 1966 to 1968, and had a spin-off movie during that time frame. Now, at the time, Batman wasn't doing so well in the comics. Again, you need to know this about comics. During the 50s and 60s, the comic industry was in the Silver Age, and that was where things were lighthearted and silly, and Batman was being affected by the most of this. Now, in many ways, this TV show saved Batman from being cancelled. Because, again, the reason why comics were silly around this time is because there was this Comic Code Authority, which pretty much censored a lot of stuff in comics and prevented many comic artists from creative freedom. And, of course, around this time, ABC wanted to create their own TV show in order to keep up in the ratings of some of the most iconic of, with these other networks, and they bought Batman. William Dozer, who produced the show and essentially did many of the narrations in the series, um, yeah, went, according to a story, went and bought one of the most recent comic books. And of course, at the time, these comics were silly and campy. So he decided he wanted to create this show, an automatic, and when, of course, history was made. Based on what the comics were at the time, it became what it is. Now, something I want to point out here before we go on further in the review and more into the background. First off, like I said, I'm a huge Batman fan, and these days I like to watch my more darker and grittier interpretations of Batman. Hell, these days, Batman is called the Dark Knight for a reason. But this show is the reason why we love the Bright Knight. He is absolutely fantastic in the role. Fantastic. This is absolutely great. And again, when people look at this, they look down on this one because it's lighthearted and campy, and said it's not an absolute faithful interpretation. Well, to be fair, this is what comics were like at the time. So when you watch this in the absurdity, this is what comics were like, and I like that. So I just want to point that out before we go further in the review. As a result, and also when they did test audiences for the episode, they didn't like it. It had the worst test screening, and could have been cancelled right there. But of course, ABC already bought the show, and as a result, they had no choice but to air it. And of course, as we know from history, they did. It became an immediate smash and an instant phenomenon. And yeah, all I have to say there. Like I said, the show ran for 3 seasons. When during its second season, the show began to have a decline in the ratings, and as a result, when season 3 came, the budget was slashed immensely, and we'll get to that as soon as we get more into the season 3 reviews. And as a result, the series just went further, and as a result, it ended after 3 seasons. And for the third season, in order to save the show, they introduced Batgirl into the series. But Batgirl was already kind of a thing in the comics. She appeared in the Golden Age, but was reinvented during the Silver Age with the more iconic Barbara Gordon version. But of course, we get to that as soon as we start reviewing season 3 episodes. Anyway, enough rambling. We get the background. We get the show. Let's get on to actually reviewing the first ever episode. Hi, Diddle, Riddle. Now, already by the title, we can already guess who the villain is. Now, I also want to point out something. This is going to be full in depth, so there will be spoilers. Well, spoilers. But I'll try to do my best to keep them down to a minimum. And so this episode opens when we are at Gotham City's World's Fair. And at the fair, there is a ceremony being taken place for Bavaria, and it's basically sort of like a celebration with the country or this nation in a way making peace. Well, just friendship with America, as he keeps saying, as the guy who's speaking keeps saying with a very over dramatic accent. Again, it's silly. You're not supposed to take it seriously. And the cake comes out. And just as he puts his knife in the cake to cut a piece in the name of friendship, the cake explodes. Everyone in the room's in a panic, and two cops come out with their guns wheeled up in the air, and a note attached to a parachute falls. And instantly we hear a beloved certain theme. Yeah, so the thing the show did is the villains would have their own theme song. Now, I've been trying to get a music for it to play on this video, but sadly I can't. Sadly not. And this theme will be associated with this villain for the entire series. And automatically the riddle is, why is an orange like a bell? And automatically, Gotham City Police Department has easily deduced that it is the Riddler. Now, and of course, none of them are brave enough to go up against Riddler. Something that became a running gag is that the police are too stupid, it's really bizarre even enough to even, actually go up against Riddler or any other supervillain in the show. So as a result, they turn to the iconic red bat phone to call up Batman at Wayne Manor. Here at Wayne Manor, we get to see Bruce as a sort of millionaire, and this is the episode that tells us his origin, very briefly, of how his parents were murdered at a young age, something that is deep in the mind of many, Bat fans with his mythos. And of course, he quickly gets sick and says they're going fishing, which is a little, running gag, saying on the show. Here we get to see Alfred, also how he would pick up that phone and say, one moment, I'll get Batman. And of course, Aunt Harriet appears in this episode, albeit in a very brief picture. Very brief moment. And of course, they go down the bat poles, and that iconic Batman theme song and the opening credits play. One of the most iconic TV music, theme songs plays for the first time. And of course, they drive the Batmobile out of the Batcave, which we get to see for the first time on the way to GC, Gotham City Police Department. They get there, they solve the riddle, and deduce where Riddler's gonna be. And as they arrest Riddler, see Riddler committing a crime, well, they think is a crime, turns out he's not, actually. And he even gave them a tip-off just before they enter the building with another riddle. What? There are 4 men in a boat with 3 cigarettes, no matches. How did they manage to smoke? Of course, it tips them off what they're gonna do. As a result, Riddler then sues them for false arrest. As Batman, and again in the show, Batman and Robin actually duly deputize agents of the law. They actually support the police and get called in to deal with all the criminals that the police feel is in their jurisdiction. And as a result, Batman is now being sued. And when he has to turn up to court, not just to pay $1 million lawsuit, but he has to reveal his identity. So now Batman and Robin have to track down Riddler and stop him for his crime before they go to court. And of course, the episode would end with a classic cliffhanger, which has become a mainstay and a staple for the series. Again, the cliffhanger is an homage to the movie series, which in many ways was any superhero's first ever movie, way before the Marvel, and the more modern superheroes are being made today. And and the cliffhanger is pretty tame. And that's all I'm just really gonna say, because again, I'm trying not to really spoil as much, but I do know that this show, for the first 2 seasons, followed a very specific formula. But enough of that, let's get into the cast, or at least the main cast that would defy the series for all 3 seasons and 1 movie. Now, our cast includes, of course, Batman and Robin, portrayed by the late, great Adam West, and Burt Ward. Now, there was a story, of course, that was test screening audiences for a different Batman and Robin to be on the show, but no one could pull these 2 better. Burt Ward just nails the line, and Adam West just says every absurdity with a straight face and with a serious acting. And of course, this is what they mostly are when they're not, portraying their roles. Overall, this is just one of the most... Overall, when it comes to this show, you just picture these 2 in the roles, and you just agree no one could have done the role better. And these 2 just nail their performances really well in this first outing. Now, and of course we have the great Commissioner Gordon, who of course has been portrayed by many actors since, and even one actor before the show. Commissioner Gordon, portrayed by Neil Hamilton, again portrays him as this person who always has confidence in Batman, sees him as a friend, and always calls him in. Again, there's been many people to do it, but I like how this Gordon just looks and how what he says with such authority. I just absolutely love it. And of course, beside him is our Stanford rep as Chief O'Hara, a character created specifically for the show. And it's essentially Commissioner Gordon's number 2. He's a bumbling Irish cop, but he's a good guy. He may do some funny things in the show, but he means well. And I like how he always has Batman's back. And sometimes, and the little running gag is, if you really catch up on it, Batman just doubts his contributions to the Force. And again, it's something really funny. Other main characters include Alfred, portrayed by Alan Napier. Alan Napier, who of course is Bruce Wayne's faithful butler, and of course was a character that originated in the comics. And basically, he of course does have big roles in later episodes. Sometimes he does minor roles in episodes, but he's always just a fun presence to be around. A character I found very strange to appear in this show, and I was taken back by a bit, was Aunt Harriet, portrayed by Marriage Blake. Hopefully that name's being pronounced right. And I thought it was a character that was created specifically for the show. But actually, she appeared in the comics. Apparently, the character's creation was to sort of to make it that no, Bruce Wayne and Dick Grayson are not a homosexual couple, because that was going on in the 50s. Apparently, this person said, when this guy made a book and saying that they were a homosexual couple, it weren't, they were just being stupid, but, it happened. And of course, she's just a delightful addition. Sometimes she does big and grander roles, but she's always just a fun addition to the show. I absolutely love it. But let's get to, in my opinion, the real star of this episode. Frank Gorshin in the role of the Riddler. One thing I always loved about the show is the villains were played by big actors and stars of the time. Frank Gorshin was a very well-known stand-up comedian and an actor in many, mostly more small roles in TV shows, and is a very talented character actor. Now, something I always want to point out, the Riddler at this point in comics was actually just a minor villain and almost a forgotten one. This show helped catapult Riddler into becoming an A-lister immediately overnight. Now, the performance of Riddler, when you watch it today, isn't the more traditional Riddler you want. He can be this cackling Looney Tune. The laugh Gorshin makes is absolutely crazy. It makes you realize the guy is absolutely and completely off his rocker. And of course, he could then switch to a deadpan serious, almost like a split personality. And as a result, this seriousness is suddenly intimidating. And of course, there's just the energy Frank Gorshin does. He lets himself loose. Nothing holds no bounds in this. He's absolutely jumping up and down, cackling these riddles. He could just, and for many people, they consider this villain to be the best villain on the show. So I think, well, you get to it when I do a top 10 my personal favorite top 10 Batman villains, hopefully some point down the line in the near future. Overall, he is just a wild card. He literally is. And I just love what he does in this. No one, in my opinion, could have done this role better. Now, like I said, when you watch it today, this is not a traditional Riddler. You see, nowadays, the Riddler is more of a smug, arrogant jerk who gets his kicks off, proving his superiority over Batman and plans his crimes according to that. Now, to be fair, Riddler does do this in the series, but Gorshin just takes a different approach. So as a result, I actually argue that it's Frank Gorshin doing his own spin on the character. And he just does it absolutely differently, but does stay true to the character's roots. He does crimes not just for the fun of it, but to also have the satisfaction of outwitting Batman. And you see that when he does outwit Batman in this episode. So I really love that. Another thing I also want to point out is, of course, the villain would have a sort of mole character, like a female henchman. Well, at least some of the villains will, some won't. And and this one actually surprised me when I watched. This is Molly, played by Jill St. John, who, of course, you would know if you watched one of my videos. It was actually the Bond girl Tiffany Case. Yeah, I was shocked, but I actually found her performance here just what it is. Jill, Molly is this woman who's working for the villain. That's really all these roles are for the girls in the show, at least for some of them. You understand as we get later. Like, they're just like they're kind of there for eye candy. They're kind of there to help the villain's plot along sometimes. It really depends on the actor's purpose for the role. Overall, and I just found her to just be genuine shock overall, and that's all I can say. Just a genuine shock. Overall, this is a really good episode to kick off a series. It has some of the staples you already expect. The bat pose, the first introduction to the Batcave, Riddler's first appearance, the Batmobile, the red phone, the Shakespeare head, the cackling lunacy of the Riddler and shouting out riddles, the cliffhanger. Literally, some of the things just stand out today, and even some of the most corniest and ridiculous jokes in this episode, they all came from here. But not everything that is hugely associated with Batman came at this episode. You have to wait for the second parter. Like I said, this show was revolutionary in its time. First off, it's one of the few TV shows to be in color, as most were still in black and white. And it's pretty much a comic book from that time period has come to life and is on your television sets. Another thing I also want to give credit for, another thing for the show, is what it did. The formula. It would stay true. A villain would pop up. Gordon realized they need Batman's help, call him up. He comes down, investigates the scene, and basically you have this filler with either action or suspense action throughout the episode, and would usually end on a cliffhanger, making you come back the following night to see how Batman got out of it and continued the story, and would immediately wrap up. That's how the formula would be. And yeah, this is the first. Now, yeah, that's just it. This was revolutionary, as for once, shows just didn't have to be taken seriously. Overall, this was just a really great episode to kick off, and it's one of the most iconic TV shows in television history. It literally laid the groundwork for superhero shows. It laid the groundwork for essentially absurdity. It was perhaps arguably one of the first superhero shows. Now, technically, there was another superhero show that came first, the Superman in the 50s, but for me, I just feel that this was just a show that really understood what it meant to be a comic book show. It had its own feel, it had its own identity, and that's what I love about it. This is just a really great episode overall. And I just can't wait to find out how they wrap it up with the second part. And there you have it, ladies and gentlemen, my review of the first episode from Batman 66. I absolutely adore this show, and I can't wait to reveal the second part. I hope you really enjoyed this. Again, I can't really go from full detail in the first part, as you have to wait for the second part to understand the whole thing and everything to wrap up so coherently. Anyway, I'm really going to enjoy doing videos of this because I absolutely adore this show to this day. The darker versions may come and come and come, but nothing is going to diminish the late great Adam West and his portrayal as Batman. And Burt Ward will always be, in many people's mind, the definitive Robin. Nothing will change that. This is the Steven now, and until next time, so long for now, and I hope to see you soon.